In this video, I'm going to respond to a few things Sam Harris said in a video that appeared in my feed under the title Sam Harris Basically Unlocks the Secret to Life, which turns out to be from one of Joe Rogan's podcast episodes. So let's watch the first of the two clips and then I'll share my reaction.
The superpower you're after, which you actually can acquire through this practice, is to realize that virtually all of your psychological suffering, and actually arguably virtually all of your physical suffering, the difference between physical pain and suffering, which those two are not quite the same thing, is a matter of being lost in thought. It's a matter of thinking without knowing that you're thinking. And what mindfulness does, and really any technique of meditation ultimately should do, is teach you to break the spell of being lost in thought and to notice a thought as a thought. The huge difference is, until you learn how to meditate or do something like meditation, you're just helplessly thinking every moment of your life. You're having a conversation with yourself. You're having content, whether it's imagistic or linguistic, pour forth into consciousness every moment, and so incessantly that you don't even notice it. It's just white noise. And not only does it completely color your experience moment to moment, so like if they're angry thoughts, you're angry. If they're depressed thoughts, you're depressed. If they're sad, you're sad. So you become your thoughts, but you also feel identified. You feel that you are the thinker of your thoughts. You feel like a self, and it's completely structured by this flow of mentation every moment, and it produces everything you do. It produces all of your intentions and your goals and your actions. And he said this about me, and now I'm going to say this. So it's like it's everything coming out of you is born of this same process. And meditation is a way of recognizing that consciousness, what you are subjectively, is this prior condition of just awareness in which everything is showing up: sounds, sensations, and thoughts. And thoughts can become just other objects of consciousness.
So basically, Sam is saying that psychological suffering is the same as being lost in thought, which ultimately means, according to him, that you're thinking without knowing that you're thinking. Now, I find it very difficult to agree with this perspective, as I consider myself a deep thinker, someone who's aware of almost everything he thinks and does. I understand quite well what I think and how my thoughts influence my subsequent thoughts and actions. I'm even so aware of my thoughts that many of my subconscious thoughts have become conscious. And I'm not saying this to boost my ego, and trust me, this is nothing to be proud of, but rather to challenge the idea that psychological suffering is simply thinking without knowing that you're thinking. Psychological suffering, in essence, doesn't stem from thoughts, but rather from emotions and feelings. Thoughts do evoke emotions and feelings, but thoughts themselves do not classify as suffering. They do, however, cause it. So to say that those who haven't acquired this so-called superpower of mindfulness are unaware of their thoughts is, in my view, untrue. I do agree, though, that many people, from my experience, are unaware of much of their thoughts and emotions, but that doesn't mean that unless you acquire the superpower of mindfulness, you have no awareness of what you're thinking. And I believe I'm a good example of that to point that out again. Also, in my view, you don't become your thoughts, you are your thoughts. It's not as if external forces put thoughts into our brains. We produce our own thoughts. They are ours from the start. I believe what should be said is that thoughts can influence our next thoughts, emotions, and behavior, and I think that's what he was trying to say. Sam is also saying that thoughts produce all of our intentions, goals, and actions. But when you master meditation, does that mean your thoughts will stop producing intentions, goals, and actions? If so, then it doesn't make any sense. For example, before you meditate, you have the intention to meditate, which leads to the action of meditating, and your goal is then to notice a thought as a thought, right? Furthermore, I think what he's trying to say is that one shouldn't be swept up in the content of their thoughts, but rather see them as passing phenomena, much like clouds drifting by in the sky. I will say more about this at the end of this video.
So, I mean, to take even a very basic example of the difference between pain and suffering, you can feel very strong physical pain, I mean, unpleasant pain, and just be aware of it. In that, like, the sense that it's unbearable is virtually always untrue, because in that moment you've already borne it, right? The feeling that something's unbearable is really the fear of having to experience it in the next moment in the future, right? Because you're always like, if someone drives a nail into your knee, right? You might, well, that sounds like it's unbearable, but every moment you're feeling it, you're bearing it, right? It's like what you're thinking about is the last moment and the next moment, and you're thinking about how much, when am I going to get some relief, and what's the cure, and how badly is my knee injured, and it's like you're worried about the future continuously, and you're not noticing the automaticity of thought that is amplifying the negativity of the experience in that moment. And we all know that you can have super intense sensation, which is either pleasant or unpleasant depending on the conceptual frame you've put around it. So, for instance, if you had this massive sense of soreness in your shoulder, that you would experience it very differently if it was the result of you deadlifting more than you ever had in your life and you were proud of it, right? B, probably cancer, and you're waiting for your the biopsy results, and you're worried about this is the thing that's going to kill you, or you're getting rolfed, like some deep tissue massage, and it hurts like hell, but you actually totally understand the source of the pain, and you know it's going to be gone the moment the guy pulls his elbow back, right? So it could be the exact same sensation in each one of those, but the conceptual frame you have around it totally dictates the level of psychological suffering, it can dictate the total absence of psychological suffering.
Thinking something is unbearable is not quite the same as not bearing it. Stopping the experience of pain is not really an option unless you choose to stop it through medication, for example. What unbearable really means is that it's extremely painful or unpleasant. Yes, one might think it's unbearable, but that doesn't mean they aren't bearing it. It just means it's hard to bear. I do agree that you can alleviate suffering through meditation and mindfulness, but only to a certain extent. Let's not pretend that meditation and mindfulness are the solutions to all of our suffering. And by the way, suffering to me encompasses everything that is experienced as unpleasant, including pain. We have to realize there's a big difference between theory and practice. If someone aggressively approaches you with the intent to harm, there's no time to meditate on it. You will fear for your health or even your life. Adrenaline will likely rush through your body, and you'll prepare to do whatever is necessary to survive. Here's another example. Imagine someone in a relationship, but things aren't going so well. They really want to make it work and try hard, but whatever they do, it doesn't help. But also, the excitement is gone. Why? Because they're exhausted. A part of them remains positive and hopeful, but another part is tired, weakened, and weary. Even if they meditate on it, that won't fix the situation. Sometimes emotions run so deep that no amount of reflection or positive thinking can change them. In these moments, clear actions or perhaps even a significant change become necessary. This also reminds me of Thich Quang Duc, a Vietnamese Buddhist monk who set himself on fire in 1963 to protest the discrimination against Buddhist monks in Vietnam. While I'm undoubtedly deeply impressed by what he was capable of doing, I can't help but notice that meditation and mindfulness didn't help him overcome his suffering. Now, returning to the idea that one shouldn't be swept up in the content of their thoughts, that is, of course, something to aspire to. We don't want to become entangled in them. But to think that thoughts should always be seen as separable entities is in many situations unrealistic, as I have explained with a few examples earlier. Yes, one could argue that we should be as aware of our feelings and emotions as possible, but then again, I often envy those who aren't so aware of their thoughts and emotions, since they don't run as deep in them, which could lead to quicker emotional recovery and more happy thoughts. Because isn't that what's most important? To experience as much happiness as possible? And if we don't experience a meaningful amount of happiness, I believe we should at least acknowledge the things that prevent us from feeling happy and then make a change with or without help, while also focusing on making the right choices. Although this can all sometimes be very challenging.